Welcome to a new interview in Amwal Mag. Today we have the honor of welcoming Curtis Chin. He's Chair, Senior Fellow, Senior Advisor, Global Markets at Milken Institute. Today we have a special topic, which is K-pop, understanding K-pop and seeing if within the Gulf region we can create a similar attraction within entertainment, culture, and business. Curtis, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Wonderful to be with you. I wish I were back in the UAE or, we're somewhere in the same room. But I think we've even seen these last couple of years where how the power of the screen can connect people from K-pop to K-drama. It's everything K now. K-pop, K-drama, K-food, K-beauty. I think if we rush to the end of my long answer, it would be absolutely there's the opportunity for a Middle East nation to become, in its way, its own power of soft power. But yeah, delighted to be with you today.
You gave me a great introduction for the lay of the land, so that's fantastic. So, we noticed that it started from sort of entertainment, and now it's become something that's spreading across global markets, and it's a culture-led growth. So, for you, how did this evolution happen? How did K-pop move from being something that's a local music scene into a global economic and soft power phenomenon?
Absolutely. It's such a terrific question. And first, for those of your listeners, readers, viewers who don't know much about the Milken Institute, nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank based out of Los Angeles. I'm really part of one of the leadership team of Asia. And as they told me so often last year when I was in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Riyadh, my friends, they were like, don't forget, the Middle East is Asia. And I think in many ways, if you're going to say, like, you're Africa, Europe, or Asia, you're Asia. But it's also because at this moment, hopefully it continues, Asia, despite all the challenges, is seen as a different kind of power too. Away from the issue of military or economic power. Parts of Asia, Korea in particular, has become a soft power. And so how did I even get involved with this issue? I came from the world of, advertising, public relations, government. I was on the board of directors of the Asian Development Bank. And then when I joined the Milken Institute, this think tank, it's really about economic growth, about lifting people up into really greater prosperity, and we hope at the same time more meaningful lives. So it's linking capital with great ideas for investment or new projects or new philanthropies. And so when I came into this world, I wanted to argue in Asia, as I might in the Middle East, that as a nation develops, don't forget the power of its creative economy. So clearly music, but also the creative economy is also film, it's sports, it's culture. And that too can be a driver of economics and of growth. And so for me, when we think about Korea, it's a little bit of luck, but there's also strategy and planning too. So first, people don't know me, I may look totally Asian, but I'm totally American. But I was a kid also in Korea because my father was based in Korea. And the Korea of, 4 decades ago and today are so different. So how did it change? As you think about the in ways terrible history of Asia too, World War II, Korea, Japan fighting, and still animosity between nations of Asia because of history. And so when you think about Korea's own development, for a long time, Japanese content, film, music was banned in Korea. And so a couple key things happened as Korea emerged that allowed this world of K-pop and now K-drama to really flourish. So one was Korea became an open democracy. And with that meant, I don't say no, but certainly the phasing out of a lot of censorship. And so it's interesting, as I talk to you, you want to be asking yourself, will these work in my own nation? Will it work, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in Oman? You ask yourselves if one of the key factors for Korea was an end to censorship. Every country, even the US, has its own way of censoring, self-censoring, government censoring. But to the degree that creators can feel free to create what are the constraints? So the bigger the opportunity to create, the better. So Korea ended the censorship as it became a true, real, robust democracy for good and bad. As it became more confident, it ended the ban on Japanese content. And then they saw Japanese content was in many ways some of the highest quality because Japan had money. So the leading technology to produce music, to produce film. And so Korea, to compete, had to upgrade its own production qualities. And then an interesting factor happened was that Korea decided over China's objections to install an anti-missile defense system. For them, they need to worry about North Korea, but China wasn't very happy that maybe Korea could see what, China was doing too. And that led to I won't say informal or a de facto ban on a lot of Korean content in China. And so it forced some of the big Korean conglomerates to think about a market that's bigger than just China. Because at that time, China, by some accounts, was one of the largest purchasers of Korean content. So when China said we're going to ban that or informally ban it, companies need to diversify. So all this was happening, and then the pandemic happened. And the pandemic, as all of us know, you're locked in your home. And in a weird way, K-pop really flourished because some of the earlier K-pop bands had built online relationships with a fan base. And so there's no more live concerts, but they could still be delivering an interactive experience with K-pop fans. In the world of TV, it was the rise of streaming. So, in different markets, there's different platforms that lead, but clearly Netflix became a powerhouse via streaming. But what does Netflix stream? They need content. And so during the pandemic era, they were, to their great credit, they brought to the world content that wasn't maybe the same old English language US content and Korean content, as we've seen with Netflix putting, I think, in $1 billion to create more Korean content, really flourished around the world. So later on, let's talk about storylines and the relevance and would that work or not work. But if you ever watch K-dramas, this K-drama content as well as K-pop content that flourished, it's like some of the same themes that are almost universal, family issues, rich gets poor, gets rich again, jealousy. So universal storylines. And if you're thinking about the Middle East, where I've always been told, oh, Turkish content is the best. But how does it evolve? And so when you think about all these things happening and put on top of that a smart government, because part of production is also about tax incentives. It's about distribution. And a key one for any of you watching, listening, reading who are parents is there an ecosystem that supports young people going into this industry? At one of our Milken Institute panels, we do these big convenings all around the world, from Abu Dhabi to Singapore to LA. I remember there was a well-known screenwriter, Adele Lim, worked on Crazy Rich Asians, worked on Raya and the Last Dragon, the first Disney film to feature a Southeast Asian, princess, it's animated. And she said one of the big issues is that parents don't want their kids to go in this industry, right? So if there's no supporting ecosystem, how does a country create the workforce of people wanting to get involved while at the same time thinking through, is there demand for it? So really long answer to your question, but that's how Korea evolved. And I think countries are asking themselves, can we be the next Korea? But maybe we don't want to do all the things that Korea did. How do we find our own path forward? And I think that's an important question too.
And you mentioned the importance of government. Do you think that beyond tax incentives that you mentioned, were there other steps that they took in order to help the industry, the creative industry, flourish?
Absolutely. So, one of my colleagues, Prescott, I asked him for some data, and he talked about, if we look about Korea, government boosted its budget for its Ministry of Culture and Tourism in the early 90s. So this is well before the pandemic. And so now in Korean, there's a word, hallyu. Hallyu is almost like a wave. So there was a wave of Korean content, in a way supported, subsidized by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Often, if you think about not just in Korea, but let's say back in California, where the Milken Institute is based, California, maybe in partnership with Korea, I got to look at the numbers, began to host like KoreaCon. We always hear about like Comic-Con. But now overseas, and usually that's subsidized by your Ministry of Tourism, whatever, that KCON grows from, I think my colleague shared some numbers that it went from like 10,000 attendees to 40,000 attendees in 3 years. But the other key thing beyond taxes and incentives is the importance of protecting intellectual property. And so clearly, many countries joined this World Intellectual Property Organization, but it's that ecosystem where people don't expect to get things for free. In the old days, it'd be like, oh, can you like download that for me and give it to me on a stick? Or can you buy an illegal DVD because I don't want to buy the $12 disc? So is there something a government does to support respect for intellectual property? And that's the big role of government too. The reality is you go to some markets and it's like, oh, that's a fake Nike shirt or a fake Nike pair of shoes. Is that good or bad? But it's allowed here. So is it good or bad that now we can see all this great K-pop or K-drama content, but we don't pay for it? That's not a good thing in my mind. And it's still evolving when you think about the emerging role of AI. So I know one of our speakers at Milken Institute shared with me, oh, look, I created this with an actor who's participating in it, but it was like a little 2-minute film just created by AI. Where in the old days, oh, I need to have a production studio, I need to have camera, I need to have lighting. And so one thing to think through, what is the legal system that guides this? And, could the Middle East, could the UAE, could Abu Dhabi, part of, the UAE, be a leader in how they treat intellectual property and the monetization of creative content? And that really is the role of government. So absolutely, government is part of the support network, but if they do too much, then government becomes part of the problem. Like I was on the opening panel of the inaugural Ho Chi Minh City Film Festival, and they wanted to show one film as part of the film festival, and they couldn't do it because the authority, in the capital had not yet approved them showing that film, even though that film was like 20 years old and been wide release. But the rules were government had to approve every film that was then shown, right? And so that government hinders then a flourishing creative industry. So it's kind of, no one single way forward, but clearly creators want the freedom to create. And now if you can create with AI, what is the guidance and what are the rules there?
And so in your view, what's the difference, or how would you look at the K-pop phenomenon compared to previous waves that failed to create, the same enthusiasm and the same, popularity? Is it what you mentioned of being fan-centric and focusing on communicating with their fan? Is it, an environment that allows creativity, or is it a mix?
I think it's a mix. And again, it's also, as I noted, and this is what's different from before, the changing technology, right? Because now the technology allows you to communicate with the wide fan base, but also how you deliver the content is so different now. I'm really quite old, so I had like a Sony Walkman. I don't even know what that is. But people are like, what is a Sony Walkman? They don't even know what the latest thing is, right? But the technology has changed the delivery, and that's something that was very different than before. And then again, as I noted with the pandemic, with this hunger for content, people are thinking through, maybe it doesn't just have to be from my own country. And then the creators themselves, they also have recognized the power now also almost like taking the show on the road too, where live performance has come back as a way to reach people. But it's interesting, even now it's still evolving. So just recently, so I would say, was it the last week, there were the Grammys. at the big U.S. like music, award show, and a song that was recognized at the Golden Globes, uh, uh, Grammys, and maybe at the Oscars is a song called "Golden" from this hit K-pop Demon Hunters. And so some people are like, oh, then K-pop really has gone global. But then it raised this question of what is K-pop? uh, because K-pop Demon Hunters was not created in Korea. It's really a U.S. creation, but sensitive to Korean culture. Um, um, but it won, right? And then I actually personally hated it when the Grammys created a content that was K-pop. Because is it then Korean music is not music, so they can't win in the pop category. They have to have their own category. It's like if something wonderful and amazing emerged from the Arab language world, it can't compete, and so Grammys will have like the Arab pop category. So it was really interesting. Also, like I don't care was it best I say record and album, but Bad Bunny or Puerto Rico. So it was really like a Spanish language, but it wasn't in like the Spanish Grammys category. That was the best. And I feel if BTS or Blackpink or whoever has the best, they shouldn't just be in like the K-pop category. So I think it's still evolving over time. So maybe not as fast as I would like. For others, it might be too fast. And even when you think about big K-pop groups, it's a business too. And if you look at, one of the biggest K-pop girls groups is called Blackpink. One of the four people is Thai, Lisa. She's not Korean. She's not even Korean Thai. She's Thai, right? But she's a K-pop star. And so probably people don't even know she's Thai unless you're from Thailand. So again, it continues to evolve. And so I think that's where countries have themselves the opportunity to help define a genre. Right. Separately, I'm less of an expert in it because I'm old, but some people say that if you look at the actual data, bigger than film, TV, music added all together is gaming. Right. So all those like video games is such an outdated word, but all those games, young people play on a screen, the numbers there are even bigger than film, TV, music. And a lot is a mix driven by Asia, but driven also by the US too. So it's interesting how it all evolves.
I mean, it's interesting to see how out of necessity a success story came back, markets being closed. So it's the importance of private markets. If we look at the Gulf region, there's capital available, there's a will, there's a big focus on all the themes you mentioned, whether it's gaming, entertainment, and so on. So for you, where would you see the similarities between the scene that you have in Korea with the Gulf, where there's a big ambition and there's also a desire to to show Arabic culture in a new way and to communicate and engage with the world?
It's really interesting that, again, last year I was in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and in each of those places, in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, I almost felt like a little bit like when I had begun my career, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago in Hong Kong, Tokyo, and I'm in Singapore. At that time, these places were so welcoming of foreign ideas, foreign capital, foreign people. It's less like that today. I feel Hong Kong, Tokyo, Singapore, because of economic challenges, have become a little bit more inward looking. So that sense of optimism and welcoming to the world, I actually now feel in the Middle East. Because they want foreign capital, they want foreign ideas, and for like people like want a nice apartment, they want foreign expats. It's like there's no more expats here, no money for expats. But I felt still there's an opportunity for expats to share ideas and all. So when I think about the Middle East today, I mean, I think it's at almost like a takeoff moment, and that's where it was very striking when I had said earlier that when I was in the Middle East, people are like, don't forget, Middle East is also Asia, because sadly, for foreigners, sometimes when you say Middle East, the stereotype is not a good one. It's about Israel-Middle East conflict. It's all about oil. It's now about, in the old days, Iraq, Iran, now it's Iran. Like the storyline isn't always a wonderful, nice story. And so it's changing, and I think there's an opportunity to change that. But it also becomes through giving people a sense of what is it really like there. And that's this whole issue also of, is it the tail wagging the dog, meaning like what you want to show, is it really the Middle East or it's what you want me to think the Middle East is? So many people weirdly think they know Korea because they've watched like 30 Korean dramas. But it's like, I don't think you really know America if all you've watched is Hollywood films. So even better, come visit. And I was struck by when, again, one of my colleagues, press, had to give me some data that says when you look at the Korean creative sector, I'll read you the numbers. 4% to 5% annual growth rate, employing over 600,000 people and generating $12.4 billion in export revenue in 2021. In comparison, South Korea's consumer electronic equipment exports generated only 4.7 billion. So maybe some people think that, oh yeah, I know Korea. That's LG, that's Samsung TVs, whatever, right? It's like, know that because all those TVs, I don't know, they moved to China, I don't know. And actually even bigger than exporting consumer electronics from Korea is Korean creative content. And so people don't always think that, right? And so the stereotype right now would be, oh, Middle East, they got a lot of energy. They have a lot of oil to export. But wouldn't it be amazing if I was surprised to learn, well, actually, creative content is now 25% of that. I have no idea, but it shows people need to think differently. And what I feel has been great also about the Korean content, this Korean wave of Korean content has been, I think, cited the most, like 25% or so, but cited the most reason, or 31% is enough, 31.9% of those surveyed people visiting Korea said it's because of this Korean soft power, this creative content. So it's driving tourism and all. And to the degree that we could get people to visit, the diversity that is the Middle East, even better that they experience for themselves what it's like. I think a question for the Middle East will be, each country is so unique and so different, or each, emirate is so unique and so different that when they produce the content, how do you stay true to yourself versus, I have to genericize it to make it popular all around the world? And that's, I don't know what the right balance is. Because when I watch I love all these police drama shows. So I'm watching all these Korean like drama, murder mysteries. And I hope Korea, there isn't like a murder a week, that's like good for TV, but that's what I'm watching. But at the same time, you see a dazzling Seoul backdrop, or you see the countryside that is Jeju Island, but you see Korea. And so it's sometimes funny when these K-dramas are filmed, an episode in Switzerland, because then you have all these fans going to the Switzerland like bridge where those K-pop stars were. And that's great too, because these crossing of cultures so that people can better understand the wonders of the Middle Eastern region. And if it's through, I have to figure out what the word is. It like A-pop and A-drama for Arabic, or is it M for Middle East? I don't know. You can help us create something like that. But you have to have that ecosystem, the tax incentives, the people that will support the creation of this. Last year, why I was in Riyadh last year this time, I was a guest at the Saudi Arabia through like almost like a future of media summit, which I think is happening again right now. But I went last year, and clearly they have ambition. They have the capital, more so than some of these smaller places in Asia have had. They have the capital to invest in the production part. You can buy the best cameras, create the best studios, but how do they encourage the creative side and think through a market that is bigger than just Saudi Arabia? And so are there lessons? I have to study it. Are there lessons from Turkey? I don't know, but how it's evolving, people of the Middle East will shape it, but capital will be key. Remember, Korea's growth also is because capital has come in now from Netflix and others, which has been mixed, because Netflix then controls that content
Sure.
versus the small production companies that are not part of the Netflix system. So how do you achieve that balance? Is there a new kind of fund in the Middle East that funds local creators to help them get started? I don't know, some interesting things to think through.
Yes, there are some initiatives that are similar to what you mentioned to promote the local creative talents and to move forward. You mentioned, you can buy cameras, you can build up nice studios, you can do all that, but if you don't have the people to run it and the talent to run it, it becomes a bit difficult. What role did academies and training system play to create this industry that employs, you mentioned 600,000 people in South Korea?
It's a key role. It's always about the capacity building side things, but it's also about partnership. I mean, the reality is that some people build skills by going elsewhere to study, right? Do they go study at a film school in the US and then bring those skills back? So it's a little bit of, even crossing borders to help establish and build up an industry. I lived part of the year in Thailand where I was a kid, and people know Thai silk. But one of the proprietors and supporters of Thai Silk was an American, Jim Thompson. So the Jim Thompson brand was because foreign knowledge came back in to bring back indigenous knowledge. So, and at the Milken Institute, we're always trying to encourage this interaction. That how do we, in these challenging times, get different nations, different sectors to work together? And part of that is training people. I think for me, one of the more special programs at the Milken Institute is a partnership with the World Bank and the IMF, and I think it's Georgetown University, but it's this three organizations coming together to help build the capacity of Ministry of Finance and central bank staff, mid-careers, because we can learn from each other, and so it'll be the same in the creative sector. We can learn from each other.
You're more granular than many people when it comes to the Middle East, and you sense the sensitivities. And it's true that if you look at content today, there's a difference between Egyptian content and Saudi or Gulf-based content or Lebanese content.
Absolutely.
When we look at Asia, it's the themes and the way it is done. You mentioned Japan, you mentioned South Korea. Is it also the same way that I'd say each country has its own color, or its own theme, or its own way of doing, creative works?
Absolutely. I mean, every country is very different, very special in its own way, but it becomes a business question too, meaning what if my country is only, I go a lot to a beautiful Buddhist kingdom named Bhutan. I was just, there. I met one of their more famous directors, Paulo. His film, it was like, it's about like a yak in a classroom. Was one of the candidates for best international film. It didn't win. But that's out of a country of 600,000 people. I would say there's very few nations in the world where one of your issues is there's a yak in your classroom. So it's a very Bhutanese story, but it was really about a story about young kids not being able to get an education, and a Bhutanese teacher from the big city comes to try and teach them. Does he learn great lessons from a simpler life in the village? So it's almost like, I'll say universal theme, but it's a theme that might resonate in different places. I mean, I think I'm embarrassed to say, I shouldn't be embarrassed, I should be proud to say, when I was in college, I studied Arabic. And it's because I think the Arabic writing is so beautiful. So I can even still write my name like Kurtz. But then I had to learn about Arabic, and my teacher was Egyptian. And the people are like, oh yeah, you sound like an Egyptian. But so, I mean, even there's a uniqueness, and it's been great that one of the great things out of the pandemic and streaming is that, sometimes now Americans in particular who used to hate subtitles, they'll still listen to the language, but they'll read subtitles. Others will be like, oh, now with AI, everything can be dubbed. So I just want to
Mhm.
hear the dub English voice, you know. So different people like different things. So when I think about your question, all this diverse nations of Asia, so why is it that it's only been Japan? There was the J-wave. In music, there was Hong Kong's Cantopop era,
Mhm.
and now it's the K-pop, K-drama era. And so other countries like a Thailand, like a Vietnam, who have bigger populations, are saying, why can't we make a lot of money too by sending our content globally? And so that's a key question also for the Middle East. You know, is it one, first we want to break out of just having Saudi content for Saudis, you know, Emirati content for Emiratis. We want to at least do all the Middle East, but then maybe we want to go global. That's even a tougher one. And so just trying to think through what are someone's ambitions, how do they break out? And there's still that part of, I feel, even in Asia, where people like, they feel success if they did well in the US, because the numbers are bigger in the US. Because like, I might be the #1 box star in the Philippines, which is over 100 million people, but you don't make that much money compared to if you were a big star or medium star in the US. But I feel it needs to be more than about money, to be quite frank, too. But at the same time, you got to pay the bills, you got to raise money for your next production. So, you know, I went on CNBC once and I said, you know, you don't have to be a giant power like a US, a China, or even Korea to be a soft power,
Mhm.
right? Because soft power is more than what we're talking about, a film and TV. You know, you could be a soft power and influence people because you're a leader in, like for Bhutan, in this notion of gross national happiness. Judge us not based on how much money we make per capita, but also respect for culture, respect for nature, and influence others that way. And so when I look to the diversity that is the Middle East, a country that's not a giant country can also influence the world, and that's an amazing thing. You know, it's always a sensitive, touchy topic, not just in the Middle East, but even in the US on today, the role of religion. And so you think about film and TV and culture, you know, it doesn't need to promote a religion, but I feel it should be respectful of religion, or maybe better, maybe should it ignore religion? I don't know, because actually Korea is an interesting one. You know, Korea, you know, Buddhist, but Korea has one of the largest percentages of Christians in Asia. But when I watch a K-pop drama, I'm never thinking I'm watching a Christian K-pop drama, even though they maybe get married in a church. I'm thinking about, oh, it's a story of, you know, a boy meets girl, boy doesn't like girl, boy gets back with girl. That's the story, right? So again, but we have to be sensitive, clearly, to where something is made.
Mhm. I think when you mentioned story, this is the key point. It's like good stories and universal
Mm.
stories tend to attract audiences. But there's also, the global platforms today that
Mm.
and the algorithms that are put forward. There was an interesting interview with, I think it was Matt Damon, where he said that even Netflix, they tell them to, repeat the storyline 3 times because people are watching their phones, so they want the people to understand. So things are changing compared to traditional gatekeepers that were media companies or production companies. How do you think Korea approach this issue, and how should the Gulf countries or Gulf, content producer look at it?
Yeah, it's actually not, I think, not an easy answer. Well, first, I'm going to go back to how you talked about algorithms,
Mhm.
right? Algorithms shape what we watch for good and bad. So it's like even on, you know, I'm one of the faces sometimes of Milken Institute on social media, and I'm like on X, you know, used to be Twitter. And I still like X, and they're like, oh no, it's so crazy, it's so and it's like, to be honest, I don't like follow all the craziness, so the algorithm doesn't feed me more craziness. So we are both the problem and the solution in terms of shaping what the algorithm feeds us of what we see. So again, you know, that's the whole challenge with technology, you know, and what are the guide rails that we will have to use there. But so when I think about global platforms, sometimes recognize that maybe countries should nurture their own platforms, right? I don't think, you know, my own personal, I don't think you should go so far as to ban platforms, but maybe you do need to regulate them. It's like if you go to China, so many things are banned. I can't do Gmail. Maybe YouTube is banned. YouTube is now one of the biggest platforms for creative content. But maybe it's banned in a country. Is that good or bad? In India, they've banned TikTok. Right. US, they're doing this weird kind of deal with China, I don't know, right? Each country needs to do what's right for itself. So thinking through first, is there pan Middle East, pan Arab, I don't know what the phrase is, platform
It is. Yeah.
that we should encourage.
There is actually one. Yes, there is several.
Right. And then in the marketplace, you're thinking, well, do people use it? Or they're all going to YouTube, right? And then they got to compete with each other. But how do we encourage people and all? And the reality is that new ones emerge, right? And so for us, who knows, 5 years from now, maybe it's some other one we don't even know about. I don't know if you remember, for a while, people were promoting these like series that were like, I don't know, each episode was like 2 minutes, right? It's a new form of content being delivered to people. Can the Arab world create something that the rest of the world comes to? Remember, TikTok came out of China. It's called something else actually in China, but it emerged. I remember when there were ads about it at the Los Angeles airport. I'm like, what is that? And so, again, this battle for great ways to deliver creative content. And I think, like you said earlier, sometimes it really is about the story. I've done a couple Milken Institute panels on storytelling. But then how is the story told, right? Is it through video? Is it through drama? When I was in, I don't know if you saw it, but when I was in Abu Dhabi, I went on stage with Kimball Musk. Kimball Musk is the brother of Elon Musk. And Kimball Musk's newest venture is Nova Sky Stories. And he said on stage that if you think about like using space, we have these big football, soccer stadiums, and you go and watch a sports event, you go and watch a concert, but maybe there's a new way of storytelling emerging that is told by drones. Technology will create new ways above you, and maybe that's a new kind of storytelling. So I think each generation, there's something new and wonderful emerging, and so that's the way it's delivered. But now, what is that story? Is it always the same old universal story, like the 5 stories or whatever it is of Hollywood?
It was. I was there. I watched the panel. It was a great panel because I was happy to see for once. We're talking about drones every time in the defense and dual use. And for once, we're talking about creativity. So it was a great panel. If we continue on these thoughts, if there were one mistake that you would tell either policymakers or investors in the Gulf not to make while trying to create K-pop, similar K-pop, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I hate to give people advice. I don't know the cultures and all, but in general, because I'm an American, I'm like, let the market decide, let people create amazing things. And then people say, wow, I like that. I want to see more of that. Versus saying the market has this, or the government has decided that we're all going to love, I don't know, music with pianos in it. And so I'm going to mandate whatever you do has to have a piano. And maybe something amazing will be created. But it's not, I think, for me, by default, creativity isn't, you don't tell me how to be creative. You create that ecosystem to allow me to do something. And I don't fear that, wow, I'm going to be arrested, or I'm going to be yelled at, or I'm going to be criticized. There's always a little bit of that everywhere around the world, as you work in society's constraints. But new things can emerge, and you should feel comfortable with that. Like there's a joke in Asia, my part of Asia, East Asia, with people ask, in the old days, it's funny, they would ask me, oh, how can we be the next Silicon Valley? Now they ask me, oh, how can we be the next Korea? It is kind of funny. And in the old days with Silicon Valley, I would say, well, remember, if you go to Silicon Valley, there's a lot of failure. It's almost like you're proud. Well, remember that company I created? It went bankrupt, but look at me now. I'm worth $20 million. There's some pride in that, almost like I tried, but I'm back and I'm even better. Asia, it would be like, oh, I don't want to talk about all those failures. Oh, did I do that? It's like you only want to talk about the good things. But to improve, you have to have failures along the way. And so that's also an ecosystem culture thing too, where we don't talk about our failures. But then how do you learn from others' failures if no one talks about their failures? You think, oh, I want to be that person, not realizing all the tough times that person went through and all. But clearly government can be of support. You know, do they provide some seed capital without too many constraints? Do they create the festivals and the film shows? Because, you know, if you're in the film industry, you know, how do you get your film picked up? You compete to get it in a film festival. You hope it wins awards, and then someone buys it for distribution. So the things that can take place that encourage people to see the content that people create. You know, like the Red Sea. You know, there's all these different film festivals and things that are happening. Should there be more of that so people have access to creative content?
And for you, can you put metrics or KPIs on successful, what this success would mean, or is it something that needs to be more subjective?
You know, I'm one of those people. Maybe it's a Milken Institute trait. We love numbers. So there are always some metrics like, you know, did you break even? Because before you ask me for more money to fund your next film, well, how did that last film do? You're like, oh, it had critical success. The critics loved it. And then I'm like, yeah, but no one showed up except the critics. So I feel there has to be some sense of the numbers also. And that's where also, you know, technology is great because you can post things on YouTube. It doesn't really cost you so much money to post something on YouTube. And then you get discovered on YouTube. So those costs have come down, but I feel there is a metric with regards to you can look at, you know, viewership, you can look at engagement, you can look at critics awards. I feel if there's no metric, then how do you know if it was good or bad? Right? So even if there's no outside metric, have your own metric that there was a buzz about something, that it led to others trying to emulate what you've done. It could be even like, wow, all these people now want to go to where you filmed. They all want to go to Abu Dhabi because they saw that you did some amazing TikTok creation there. I don't know, right? But I feel there need to be metrics.
And for South Korea, it was music. Do you think that it's the easiest path to move forward, that music is, the quick access that allows for the rest that comes along, whether it's movie and then tourism and then IPs and all these things, or do you think that it can be a different way?
You know, I think it's really based on the demographic, right? And remember, was music that first? I remember that even now, people are like BTS and others. Are they the fourth or fifth generation of K-pop stars? Meaning that there've been 30 or 40 years before, but we don't know about because it was pre, you know, all of this technology-driven world. And so for me, I still feel short videos are great. You know, people are like, you know, the negative is doom scrolling. You're looking at all these terrible things that your algorithm is feeding you. But again, that's one of the benefits of AI, for good or bad, that you can create. Now, video, I don't need a whole film production crew. But also think through, there's many kinds of soft power. One could even be business success. You know, I'm right here at our Asia Center headquarters of Singapore. By some rankings, Singapore has the most soft power of any of the Southeast Asian nations, you know. But then when you look at how they decide that, it's because this one, like, organization's rankings of soft power look at things like business success, you know. So again, it's different metrics go into how do you define a nation's brand strength or someone's soft power strength. So part of it is defining it, right? Maybe people don't, for rightly or wrongly, say, oh, Singapore, oh, they don't say that's the most creative place, but Singapore is pretty creative. But they think, oh, that's the best place to do business in the world. That's soft power too. That it's getting all these people that want to come to Singapore, not because of military strength or fear of economic sanctions, because the image, Singapore soft power, is rule of law. Like, even all the things that you read or hear about, you know, my home country, the United States, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to go there. Or maybe they won't even take me there anymore. But the reality, people still want to come to the United States, legally and illegally, as we've seen, because in their mind, the soft power of the U.S. is this notion of something that we even talk a lot about the Milken Institute, the American dream. Though no matter who you are in America, you can create your future. And maybe your
That's
future
true.
isn't I want to be a millionaire. It's I want to own my own restaurant and cook amazing things. You can do that in America, right? And so is that dream harder to come by? Some people say yes, some people say no. But that's still the brand, the soft power of America. And so despite all these ups and downs we all go through, there's a power when you think about the United States. And I say every country, the UAE, Saudi, Oman, ask yourselves, if you're from those places, what is it that you think people think of you? You can do research even. Is it good or bad? Sometimes there's like, remember when the UK was like, oh, this is the cool Britannica campaign. Is it because you're no longer cool, so now you have to have a campaign? Or is it, no, we're just re-leveraging the strengths? As I even think about this year, this is the 250th anniversary birthday of the United States. What has stayed the same? What has changed? But I think some of the things that will be celebrated this year will be the America's creativity, the Hollywood, the innovations, the inventions, the immigrants that have come to America, from Einstein to Elon Musk, they're all immigrants to create the new America that is still being defined. And so that's a story too. And how do we get that across? So as you think about what we all came together to talk about today, I was so honored to be in the UAE it was National Day. It was a big day. That's why Elon Musk, or that's why Kimball Musk was there to celebrate this amazing nation that was created really not so long ago, right? You think about, the United States is 250 years. So that's a story that continues to be defined. And so for me, I'm always, if you ever you interview me a lot, you'll find I'm always the optimist, right or wrong, I'm the optimist. And I think every country, including the nations of the Middle East, can again be soft power powers, but they got to think through what aspect of it do they want to be a leader in.
I have something to ask you. Do you think that you become a soft power by design, by wanting to be a soft power, or because you are creating an ecosystem that allows you to become a soft power, but this was not the original goal?
For me, it's not always so defined, but what people are striving for now is, how do I be like that nation? And almost like my answer is the opposite. Your power will be not being like that nation, because then you're like the mini version of that. You will define what is so unique and special about your own nation. So when you think about Korea's soft power, so many things now, beauty products, film, K-pop, and all. It is in many ways still uniquely Korean. It's not Korean copies of American pop music. But that's where it's funny, while others are now saying, look at, I'm making this up, Brazil pop or whatever pop, right? And it's like their version of Korean K-pop, so is Korean K-pop a version of another places? I don't know. So clearly, I think it emerges naturally, but it doesn't mean that a nation can't have regulatory policies, tax policies, and all. So as I think about, I think, one of the questions I was pondering before I even got on was that, if you were a nation, from the Gulf, or even like an investor, a sovereign from today, and you were asked, what are some 3 steps you might recommend to help build up a cultural industry, I would say 1, domestic buy-in is critical. So as you think through as a government, oh, we're going to do this, but if your own citizens undercut it, we're like, oh, that's totally makes no sense. Doesn't really work. So get your own nation to buy in, and because they're going to be part of your nation's soft power. Because when Koreans, I think, go abroad, they're proud that people know Korea, kind of, sort of, from what they've heard or what they've seen. If you can, hopefully your diaspora is support. So I have so many Korean American friends, I used to live in Korea. They're actually very proud overseas of what Korea is becoming. So to the degree that some of these Middle East nations have citizens overseas, maybe that's the first way you begin to build your own distribution network, that they're so happy to help build that cultural bridge and be proud of their home country, not just, oh, I fled that home country because I couldn't build a business there. And then the other one is much more, methodical. Do think about the supportive regulatory frameworks, tax incentives, an ecosystem so that your own citizens will say, yes, I can build a creative career here in my own country. And from here, we're going to, I don't know, influence the world.
Curtis, thank you so much. I mean, you really helped us understand better, how things evolved in Korea and in Asia, and the lessons that can be learned, seeing what is happening today in the Gulf region. Last question: who's your favorite K-pop artist?
It's funny because he's a friend. I'm gonna say my buddy Che Siwan or Siwan Che. He's older in that I think he was the second generation of K-pop stars. So his group is called Super Junior. They're doing their 20th anniversary tour right now. So I'll say him. But to be honest, I don't really know his music so well. So actually, I'm going to go see him in concert in Tokyo. But one modern star that I often quote and I drive people crazy is, there's a group called BTS. It's probably the biggest in the world. And there's a member of this group. His nickname is BTSV, but he's called Kim Taehyung. And why I like him isn't, I don't say not about his music, because he's part of this great group, but he's got some really great, I think, thoughts and quotes. And one that I often quote, which I think is relevant everywhere, he says, don't be trapped in someone else's dream. And so I would say to my fellow Americans, people I meet, the Middle East or here in Asia, and in a way, it's a very American quote. So it's not, follow the American dream. It's don't be trapped in someone else's dream. So whether you're from Abu Dhabi or Singapore, hopefully you create your own dream and follow it, right? It's not always easy, right? Sometimes government supports you, sometimes they don't. But forge your own path forward. And before you know it, you'll be like, I don't know, an Emirati pop star. But indeed, follow your dream as best you can. Right.
Curtis, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.